Welcome, welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Bardon on the Phil Rice YouTube channel. It's always a great pleasure to have you here. We've got a wonderful lineup of guests to share many, many wisdoms with you all. I've got a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll get straight into it. So first of all, I want to say a big thank you to violetflamestudios.co.nz for sponsoring this month's live streaming software upgrade. I really appreciate these guys. They're really cool people. Please go check out their website. There's so much awesome stuff to go and check out. The game in development, Ascension, the Immortal Alchemist. This is going to be a really slick number, and it's going to be, worth your time to just explore. And the Kickstarter, I believe, is launching in September with a playable demo in mid-October. And I've just done an interview with the founder, one of the creators of the game, and you can watch some on my channel. You can watch some of the gameplay footage towards the end, and it's very smooth. And I think you'll be duly impressed by the quality here. And the idea is that, this game will be essentially revealing and exposing symbolism from various traditions, and also helping to retrain cognitive faculties that may be in decline, especially with certain game types that are maybe not so friendly towards cognitive development. So there's lots of exciting things coming out of the studio, so please go check them out. Thank you very much. Now, also, I want to say that for those who are, I can't bring that up, but anyway, I want to also say YouTube has recently just activated some aspects of my channel, and so you can find new ways to support the Phil Rice YouTube channel, including obviously the work that goes into the Bardon, all the research and the reaching out to guests, the communications, the video editing, all the things. And it's a big job. I don't mind doing it, and I'm grateful for all the support. It's a great works, and I feel very honored and privileged actually to be able to share this stuff. So you can now click a join button on YouTube, and there's also please subscribe and like and all those types of things. There's a special membership option there you can open up. I've also got a Substack. I haven't put that in the banner. I've just realized that my own self-promotion, I've done everyone else's stuff, but not my own. I'll have to get that sorted for next time. So thank you so much. I'll probably do another shout out towards the end. But other than that, let's get moving here. I've got some cool people waiting to bring forward. And so first of all, I'm going to bring Mr. Philip Harris-Smith.
Hello.
Hello, my friend. How are you doing, sir?
Well, I've been pretty busy, but I'm feeling quite good.
Well,
yes, that's exact. That was. I was compelled to write that. Normally, writing something's enjoyable. It was like I was being gripped. Some invisible force had its hand up my behind, making me write. It was like that. It was quite important. It felt important until I'd written it anyway.
It was a very enjoyable read, and I certainly felt a lot smarter, and I felt like I had my my intellectuals tickled nicely by the presentation and the dancing of your very stylized verbiage. I hope I got that something in there.
I'll go with that. I like the stylized verbiage. It's all good.
Yeah, cool. And so seriously, everyone, if you haven't been to Perseus, you want to go there, because Philip's got a stack of blogs on there, and I've put the link in the YouTube description below, so you can go and see. But this new article that essentially draws some parallels and understandings between Enochian and Bardon's Kabbalah, it's a fascinating read, because we're starting to, through people exploring using the Bardon framework and then using it as essentially, I guess, as a like putting it side by side with other systems, we're finding these parallels. And so it really just sort of helps to reinforce and cement this understanding that the Bardon framework it's based around universal concepts. And Philip, I'd love to hear you give us a bit of a nutshell of the article, if you could.
Certainly. Basically, Bardon produces a cosmic language in his third book, and you work through his training. You develop a cosmic speaking of the truth, the creative word, as in "let there be light." That a lot of Bardon's training focuses towards that. Enochian is very unusual. I'm not saying it's the only language, but it's the only language I've found like this. Without any training, you can speak Enochian and get stuff to happen. So it does some of the things that Bardon's cosmic language can do, but anyone can speak Enochian and produce. And I basically offer a reason for why that is so. And the reason I offer is that Enochian is focused on the Earth sphere, all the aethers, the watchtowers, all the different things. They're all, even though they're not of the Earth, they're looking. They're with respect to the Earth sphere. They're always Earth centric. And my argument is that it's therefore a formula for the Earth sphere. And being as we are living on the Earth, we can use this formula. And that's why Enochian, when you speak it, produces effects, out there effects. But without training, they can be chaotic and unpleasant. Whereas Bardon, you do his universal hermetic keys, and they are applicable in any sphere, not just the Earth sphere. And that's in essence what I'm arguing for in that article. So that's why I say formula universalis et formula terrae. The universal formula, Bardon, the terrestrial formula, Enochian, which is also the language of the angels, but all those angels with respect to the Earth. And that's what I'm arguing for.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, just because it's it's easily accessible in some ways, you're saying that it is quite immediate.
If you speak it enough, stuff will start happening whether you have training or not.
Yeah. And so obviously there are ways to do this in a way to avoid any unhelpful or undesirable unpleasantries as well. So
traditionally you call on the good angels, but in Bardon's technique, you can bring through divine providence, you can do some theurgy, and that'll moderate and make sure that it's a harmonious effect.
Perfect. That's great. That's really wonderful. That's great to hear. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I was really intrigued by that article, I have to say, and like I said, very easy to read. And so looking forward to the next article and the next up. Okay. Thank you for that, sir. Always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you. I'm going to bring on now. Who have I got up next? Mr. Clint Sabom. Now, hello, Clint. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Good to see you all.
Yes, you're another busy chap. I always look forward to your YouTube videos. You're very generous with your experiences and your teachings, and you've got quite a bit going on as well. And so I'd love to hear what you've been up to, what's happening. You've got a wonderful website, and you're offering teachings and courses and things. So please, if you would love to share, I'd hear it. Oh.
Sure. Well, I've been doing individual coaching with individual people, and I've been doing transmissions during some of the sessions, and I'm getting great feedback that my transmissions of Akashic energy are very strong. And I am obviously making videos on my YouTube page, which you can simply find. Look up Clint Sabom on YouTube and you will find it. Easy to find, and that's my YouTube page, releasing videos about once a week and getting lots of good comments that I can't always respond to, but appreciate that. And you can contact me through my website at clintsabom.com. And other than that, I've been busy. I've been busy a little bit with my day job, and I have been, obviously continuing my own Bardon practices. I'm kind of an initiation into hermetics specialist, so I deal mainly with initiation into hermetics. And personally, I've been sitting in the sauna a lot. I've been sitting in the sauna and doing pore breathing with the sauna, which is kind of a jump start into the fire element. And so enjoying doing that. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds really good. One of my local friend who's quite, he's a bit of a gym buddy. He's always doing the sauna thing now. So, and I've just heard you talk about it. It might have to be a thing. So that's really, really cool. Now, are you scheduling regular group sessions, or do you wait for an interest to do it, or how do you sort of run your groups?
Oh, I do them about once every 3 weeks on a Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern time in the United States. And get people. It's very cheap and affordable, and get people. And I do 30 minutes of a transmission, and then it's 30 minutes of discussion with other Bardon practitioners. So it's a kind of win-win. You get kind of two interesting things with it. So yeah, I enjoy doing them.
Oh, that's great. And I have to say, you know, connecting with other people who have Bardon as either as their main focus or even as a supportive sort of framework, and people who are active practices, is very helpful and encouraging. And I think you kind of join like a consciousness or an egregore or a spirit of Bardon in a sense that's very, I know there's an assisting element to it. I've personally found anyway, you know, it's like you said in one of your videos once, even just having the book and engaging with the book seems to evoke certain effects as well. And so that's really wonderful, Clint. I'm so pleased that you're out there teaching, brother. And thank you once again for your wonderful content you share on YouTube. I always look forward to it. So, okay, I'm going to bring forward now our next two guests. I've got Didi and Armand from Chi Skills. Hello, Didi and Armand. How are you both?
Very well, thank you.
Now, unfortunately, I can't move the banner. It's sort of sitting over your face there. So I'm just going to. Yeah. I can't. I'm just gonna drop that out of the way there for the moment. There we go. Okay. So how are you guys doing? You guys are generally pretty busy teaching, and you know, you've got an amazing website, and you know, you're putting videos out on YouTube and things too. So tell us what's been happening.
Well, this summer we've been doing a couple of summer workshops. So people came over from all over the world to practice here with us, doing lots of partner training, which was. It's always amazing to see people grow very quickly through a week.
So you help people grow with their structure and opening, spine, etc., elastic body by just putting a force on them, you know. And then it's like, oh yeah, I should correct this, should correct that, and in a week's time that goes from 0 to 10, right? It's just incredible. It's so beautiful to see people grow in such a short amount of time. Whereas if they would just practice on their own, you know, it would be like, do I have it? Do I have it? You know, now we know they have it. And so we build a foundation, and so it's just very beautiful. These are very small small group workshops. So there's a maximum of 4 people there. So you get really deep with a small group, and everyone gets their portion of our attention. So and we touch, and so you know, it's a mix of. We get a lot of people. We get a lot of teachers actually, also like Tai Chi teachers and people who want to understand the internal principles, and so it's really Qigong based. But we have Hermetic influences, because I don't see a difference anymore, because I'm just you know,
mixing.
It's I think Hermetics is the sort of the ultimate Qigong, I guess, you know. So and it makes sense for a lot of people. It translates well. It translates well for a lot of people to grasp what we mean with Jing, or what they've been reading about Qi, and we call it astral, and it helps, and you know, we get them into the feeling of Qi, and you know, so it's so great to have that sort of a progress in such a short amount of time. But they're ready for it. You know, these people, when they come over, they're really ready for this sort of information, because they find that they have a lot of so they have dots, but they miss a lot of the connections between the dots, right? So it's very gratifying. And then we allowed ourselves a short break, which was long overdue. So we went to the south of Wales, in the UK, which was fantastic. And it was beautiful weather. We had views from the hills, and that was pretty special, some people said, over there. So we were lucky. And so now we're back. And beginning of September is another workshop, 5-day workshop. And in the meantime, we're working on a private mentoring program that's starting from October. And we will be guiding people individuals, through a 10-month private mentoring program. So the two of us will help people move through 6 modules over a 10-month time, and that has grown out of. I've been teaching a lot of individuals already, but I always had a certain feeling is like I need to have a clearer goal with that, where we're working towards, instead of we're starting a process. No, we want to now capture that in a time frame where we can really go deep with people who are ready for that sort of intense training. So we're working on that now as well to
develop that.
Yeah, and also all the marketing around it, and everything really. So
we will be on YouTube a lot more from like September on. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful news for my ears. It's another channel that I really enjoy. You're very generous, especially, you do a lot of Tai Chi and Fa Jin type sharing, and that's the sort of the secret sauce that or a secret sauce that a lot of people don't know, that they're sort of, they're just unaware of it really. But doing that partner training stuff, that, I mean, my personal experience with it back here in New Zealand, just playing with people, and it takes people aback, and it really, and I think too that a lot of people will come to this after they've explored a lot of other things. I certainly did, and I've heard this from other people, and they feel like maybe they're not getting, satisfying results with other things, or they're experiencing the usual sorts of body positioning, but that's it. It's like, hollow forms and these types of things. Yeah. And when you add the substantialness through, what I personally found through Mark Rasmus, through building the ball and then learning to pour breathe it, and then using the Hermetics book alongside that to then flavor energies with elements, and then everything expanding outward from there. It's like, oh yeah, got it. Sweet. This is it. I'm so pleased. And, once you do it enough, you realize, okay, now I can translate this for the people who are basically looking for me. And I think, we're very fortunate at this time to have so many wonderful, eloquent, and well-articulated speakers on these topics coming from so many different angles, because what that means is that there's everyone's looking for a particular style of teaching, and that is now actually available. And it's not that hard to find. It's becoming more sort of seeping more into the public awareness. So these are, I actually personally find overall this is a very exciting time. And I feel very, very blessed actually to be able to have wonderful people like yourself on here, and also to have all these wonderful people in the chat. Welcome everybody. Thank you to the chat. Thank you to everyone who's joining us. I just want to do a quick shout out to a couple of people there. Well, thank you from Germany. Thank you. And also Ryan, lovely to have you here, Ryan. And I've got some topics here. I've got some, I've got this too. If you've got a question, throw it into the live chat. We're going to run through a topic, and then we'll get to the audience questions after we go through some things. But we love having your questions. Okay, so I've got some things here. Let's get cracking. I'm going to take this wonderful image here of Didi and Armand and put that back into the store. Oh, here's everyone. Okay, Didi and Armand, could I get you to just change your settings at the bottom under camera and switch it to 720p resolution?
Let me see. Settings, yeah.
Yep, camera. Oh, and then bottom right, change it to 720p.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Yep, thank you. Cool. All right. So the first question I'm gonna put up, or the first topic is, and I'm going to put this pose this one to Mr. Clint Sabom. Clint, have you found certain times of the day to be better for particular practices?
What I think is, I think most people, and I say this from client experience, most people just have a hard time finding time to do them, period. With all the life stuff going on and all the things they have to do during the day, a lot of them will even bail out on coaching because they just don't have time to practice anymore at times. And so I would just say do them whenever you can. And you can do auto suggestion throughout the day. You can pray throughout the day. There's a lot of things you can do throughout the day that will benefit you. You can live in the great here now and live in the vacancy of mind throughout the day. So there's things you can do throughout the day. I personally have always practiced in the evening, and a couple of hours kind of before bedtime, and that has been what's most effective for me and most convenient. And so after the practices, I'm deeply kind of charged and relaxed at the same time, and I'm able to just go to sleep a lot easier. But I would say do them whenever you can. Morning and night seems to be a good routine, but if you can't do that, just do them. Just do them. I think that's a lot of people's struggle.
Wonderful, thank you for that. Yeah, just getting your reps in every day. And finding that pocket of time. And obviously some people, if you've got kids, the kids are going to kind of dominate a lot of what happens in your day. And so, yeah, totally wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Philip Harris Smith, have you found certain times of the day to be better for particular practices?
Yes, but Clint's totally right. Sometimes it's a question of, do you have a time at all? Doing a practice at a certain time produces a habit. You do get a force of habit, and it's great when that's possible. But sometimes it just isn't. Something crops up that disrupts your habit, and so in the end, it's just this kind of relentless drive just to keep doing what you're doing, especially if you're starting to make progress with that particular piece of work. And in the end, because you're getting some traction, you just know that as long as you keep doing it, whether it's morning, noon, or night, or whenever, you just feel that progress. But it is optimal to have a set time of day. That's why monasteries have such strict regimes, because they know it's effective. But unfortunately, as Clint points out, in our modern world, unfortunately, that's not always feasible. But it is preferable. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Didi, how about yourself? Have you found certain times of the day to be better for particular practices?
Well, I love to practice in the mornings, and I have a dog that wakes me up in the morning, so there is no excuse to just go out of bed. I love to journal, but it depends on if the dog is really like, okay, I want to go outside. Sometimes I skip it, but most of the days I will journal. And then the dog is just sitting next to me till I'm ready. And then I go outside. And then what I love about having a dog, then you're outside and there your practice starts, because now you can connect. You can, you have the trees around you, you walk in nature. So I always love to do some pour breathing, just by walking the dog is like a great time. And then when I come back home, that's when I do more of the physical training, jump on the
little trampoline, the rebounder.
Yeah. And then do some yoga, some stretching, maybe some kettlebell training. And in the meantime, he's cooking our breakfast. So I've set it all up. I've said, this is like, normal morning routine. So I think I've just created the perfect way making sure that I do all that. And if I have more time, then I love to do, other work. Maybe after breakfast, we'll sit and we'll do some, go into Akasha, white light. It depends. Sometimes we have to work.
Yeah.
But other days that we have more time, we'll go into that. And sometimes that is also part of our starting our work day.
Yeah.
To do that. So
for sure.
And what the thing is, so I love to do the practice in the morning, but you take it into your day, and it's more of a 24-hour practice that way. And you have days that you cannot practice if you go travel or whatever reason, and you feel that there is something different to your day. So I always love to do it in the morning and then continue training for the rest of the day. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, I have to say, like, I love, for some reason, I get up at like 3:00 in the morning. I just do it, right? Get up for maybe an hour or two and just sit outside. It's so quiet. There's a creek, like a waterway just down below. And so I can tune into that. But there's also, like, if I go back to bed and then get up again at say 6 or 7, there's a freshness in the air just before the sunset it's like an aliveness or a vitality that you get first thing in the morning. There's kind of a thing at night, but there's something in the morning when it's just before the sun where you can kind of harvest that, especially with pore breathing. So I've got a section of bush down the back. I go hang out there, maybe take a coffee down. All the birds are we've got lots of cute little funky little birds and things that like to hang out and say good morning and that. And so that morning setup is wonderful. And but like you said, sometimes life does happen, and we make the best of what we can. Armand, how about yourself?
Okay, yeah. Well, I cook in the mornings, as you know. It's that's my practice. I cook with my elastic body and move energy. No, but I'm just kidding. So from a Qigong standpoint, it makes sense that you do the more yang-related exercises in the morning, where you do bone marrow packing, these things. I cannot do these after a certain time, because if I do those, I just stare at the ceiling at night. I cannot sleep, and I definitely need my sleep. So those sort of practices would be in the mornings. For sure. There's also a ritual I go through every day. In the morning, I just go through the first 2 transformations, make sure I'm expanded mental state. I want to tune into gratefulness, make sure that I really charge my energy in a way that I want to feel that day. So I just determine my state, and that's the least I do. And then there's power stretches, and there's yoga. Every day I want to stretch my body, but I do that in the morning. Sometimes I do it a little bit later if I had an intense day, to stretch my calves or to make sure that when I go to sleep, that's been done. But I think my routines change. When I was really into when I started out, I was very lucky because I was a musician. So I would start. I always taught as well. So that would start, somewhere in the afternoon and then going into the night. But I was always so lucky that I had like the mornings and part of the afternoon just training, like my Tai Chi training, etc. So I had chunks of time then to be really developed. And now that time it's different. But I totally agree with Clint, though. It's like you can always practice something, and I have my topics, So my practice has been narrowing down to specific things right now. So I want to make sure that some physical is happening, but I have my topics that I can play with 24 hours a day. And when I was studying with Mark, he recognized that. He was like, "You're one of those 24-hour types." He said to me, like, "So when you walk in the park, you practice air element, right? You walk with the dog, like bring the energy up and float yourself through the park, etc." So, and I really like to live my practice, and also teach this to students as well, because we all have busy lives, and like Clint says also, we have to make the best out of the time we have. I totally agree. It's you practice whenever you can. We have a luxury that we can live this way right now, and I'm totally very grateful for that. But
Thank you. Yeah, and this is it. Like it keeps coming back to this, finding ways to integrate the practices throughout the course of the day, because I think at some point it's like, you've got this, this, it's not the book, but you've got this book and you're going through it, or you've got your set of practices mapped out, and it's like it becomes this other thing that you do. But essentially, over time, it just becomes part of who you are. And, it starts to fuse into everything anyway.
Exactly.
When you go make a food choice at a supermarket, the way that you explore that food choice may be different prior to learning mental transference, for example, or your clairsentient skills. You're like, it's like how you choose food, it's like suddenly you'll notice these things. And so exploring how it can be leveraged in the everyday world for essentially better decision making, better practices lead to better outcomes, and these types of things. I think this is where if there's somebody's dropped a question in here, and they're struggling with consistency with the practice, even though they have time. So I'll put it up here, and I'll pass this one to Philip first. But basically, the nostalgia is saying, I can't be consistent with the practice even though I have time. So they want to do it. Maybe they're getting a bit struggling to get over the start line each day, and I can understand that. And so Philip, have you got any advice for someone who has the time but struggling to get into it? I mean, you basically just got to do it. But yeah,
I'm reminded of Mr. Aleister Crowley's poetry, which he very modestly called the Holy Books of Thelema. And he sort of lazily, vigorously, ardently, slovenly, all these things to thee, O Lord. And I think that might help. It's if you can't do anything, don't shy away from it in your mind. You think about it. Another analogy, many years ago, I had to do I was one of 5 people who actually succeeded in passing an essay on the first few pages of Plato's Republic, and everyone else had to do it again, and I had a week off. It was great. But all that week, because it was such a difficult nut for me to crack, I was thinking about it. I mean, I'm not going to go into the details of it because it's not germane. But I was going to this corner shop. I was thinking about this essay. I was, doing the cooking. I was thinking about one particular thing that I was stuck on. And then I go and read, and it's the same with Hermetic work. Sometimes you're just too cheesed off with stuff. Just that, whatever it is, maybe there's something in the world that's interfering with you. I don't know, but it's got to be in your core. And the way to do that is kind of, I mean, people talk a lot about magical oaths. You don't have to do an oath. I make an oath that I will practice every day at 5 a.m. Otherwise, I'll experience dreadful aches and pains due to sinfully not doing it. That's the wrong kind of oath. Okay, the right kind of oath is, I sincerely pledge my allegiance to you, O divine providence, or whatever. I'm not going to narrow it down. So your oath is that you pledge your allegiance through thick and thin to a particular principle, and then these practices are part of that principle. And life this is in a way it is just a re-expression of the kind of thing that Clint was talking about. Life waxes and wanes, and so does our practice. So you just keep it as a constant thread through the up and the down. And in that way you will achieve progress, even if it's 2 minutes one day, but then it's half an hour the next. It's because you have your allegiance. You've made an oath of allegiance to a spiritual principle, and then that directs you, despite being strong or weak, depending on the day, depending on the circumstances. That will enable you to continue your steady traction and steady progress. That would be my suggestion. So literally an oath of allegiance, rather than an oath of, I will promise to do this every day. Of course you aren't going to. You know, some days you're gonna play a video game. That's what I do sometimes. You know, whatever pointless thing that you sometimes do to fill time because you need sometimes to do pointless things. You know, as a human, it's part of the human condition that we all need to do pointless, silly things from time to time. You know, so you make an oath to a principle, a spiritual principle. It can be, you know, I'm a magician. It can be a magical oath. I, by my holy guardian angel, I swear by divine providence that I will aspire to make myself more than I am currently as a human, through thick and thin, centimeter by centimeter, millimeter by millimeter. I swear to you, divine providence, that I will progress. And then some days you won't do much, and then other days you'll do loads. But it becomes your compass point, and it helps with this lassitude that everyone experiences. You know, I could probably say more, but I think that'll probably cover it.
Wonderful, thank you. Armand, have you got something you can offer the nostalgia?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I cannot see, of course, what the struggle is. I don't know the person, but what really helped me was when someone said to me, "You train for the benefit of others."
Oh, yes.
Right. So this might not make sense for the person right now, but you actually do, because you're an energy being in an energy reality. So your energy is interacting with this energy, and you have an effect in this energy, right? So the better you become as a human being, as this energy being, the more will come back to you. But eventually you train for the benefit of others, because you're going to be, when you train, you're going to be a light in the world, right? So something can go through you, like through the pipeline, and you know, so there's meaning there, right? There's true meaning in that. And when someone said that to me, it's like click, something just clicked and shifted in my whole awareness. And every time I found a struggle with that, I was like, oh, I'm too much concerned with myself right now. And so I put that on the black mirror, right? It's like, okay, you know, so you train for the benefit of others. Just think about it, contemplate that for a while. And I think, you know, with what you were saying just right now, I think this is sort of in the same thing, right? It's a spiritual practice and a spirit. So what is your gift here in this world, right? What is it? What's your goal here? Can you see that? What's beyond this? It always will be something that is of service in some way for the benefit of others. So that's my thing.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, and you know, if you can discover the joy in service, that is a very valuable treasure in the long run, because it gives you a sense of purpose while you might be seeking a sense of purpose. It'll do for now, you know, because other things will come up. You can't help not be of service. If you're essentially refining and empowering yourself, you're actively helping people out. You may not just be able to notice it at the moment. I mean, when I was in my earlier days and I was giving people advice on how they should live their lives, because I was an idea hamster. Hey, you should do this, you should do that. Nothing was happening. I turned inward, I started making internal changes, and then I noticed that the external world started to change and improve. And it was like, well, I'm changing me, and for some reason I'm seeing changes in the external world. Well, I'll figure it out as I go along, but this is producing some satisfying results for me. But yeah, joy in service, I love that too, because at the beginning of the Mark Rasmus book, he talks about the, doing it for the coming generations, essentially, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. And we can have this progressive evolution rather than people having to start again and search and start again. So, Mr. Clint Sabom, have you got something you can offer on this?
Well, what came to mind in the first question I would ask this person is, do you have an altar? Do you have an altar? And I would say, build an altar. Or, I mean, you don't have to build one, literally build, but like set up something that serves as an altar. Put things that are sacred to you on the altar. If you don't even have things, go to a thrift shop. Look at statues and different things you could put on your altar. Have fun decorating the altar, even if it's just on a little podium and you've got a space on a little podium in your room. You could put a statue of a god or goddess. You could put just objects that have certain meanings for you. You could even ask the universe to give you certain objects, and maybe a feather will appear in your path one day. Maybe there'll be an interesting looking rock, and you could have fun just gathering sacred objects, and then put some candles on your altar and light the candles and light the incense and turn off the lights in your room, and then just have fun staring at the beautiful altar you created. And then you're done. That's it.
Yep.
just enjoy making the altar and lighting it up and seeing what happens. And I think that kind of gets you into a spiritual mentality, into a magical mentality, into a magical world, you know, and you've created an altar and you're building an altar, you know, and just kind of light it up, open it up. You could even say a little blessing, opening up the altar, and basically have fun staring at the altar. And then you're done. And if you want to do something else one day, you could even talk to the altar. Imagine that your spirit guides and your ancestors are kind of through the altar, coming through you. And then just talk to them and tell them about your day, like they're friends, you know. And that's kind of a form of prayer and asking for help, you know. I mean, looks kind of weird talking to yourself in front of others. You may want to be alone doing this, but yeah, just talk to them and have fun looking at the altar. And it can get you into a spiritual mentality in a magical world. And then you're like, wow, I'm in this kind of magic. And then you can kind of take pride that you're a blooming magician in the works of magic. And that's going to be a motivator to get you to practice. So that's what I would do at first. And then if you want to do something more, I would suggest doing a Zen meditation. I've mentioned this in my videos. I would suggest doing a meditation where you breathe in and out. That's 1, in and out. That's 2, in and out. That's 3, and breathe all the way from 1 to 200, counting your breaths. And if you lose count, which you could often do because the mind will start racing, you don't have to go back to the beginning. Just go back to approximately where you thought you were and keep counting from that point and go to 200 breaths. And so building the altar, having fun with the altar, lighting it up, talking to your spirit guides in the altar, coming through the altar, and then try the 200 breaths. And if that takes a month to get to that point where you're just doing that, that's fine. That's totally fine. You've gotten the ball rolling. And so, yeah, I think that altar would really motivate you, you know. So that's just an idea.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Yeah, I think I'm setting up some physical ascetics, setting up sacred, portioning off a section of your dwelling, and then making, bringing beautiful things there, specialness, and just waxing on specialness through objects that you find on your way, seemingly unlikely, coincidental things that stand out. And yeah, I really love that response. Thank you, Clint. Didi, have you got something you can share for nostalgia?
Yeah, I love all the other answers. So I'm like, maybe very practical one is like, for me, it started with like, if I just give myself 10 minutes and then I can, the person who asked the question said, I have enough time, but just set a specific time where you want to practice. Like every morning, you can take 10 minutes at first. And when you when you see results, you might want to practice more. So just take just enough time to have a certain feeling around it. And then the next day, try to do it again and try to build a routine around it. That really helped me. Just to set, and once I got started, I just felt so much better that I wanted to continue and take more time and take more time. And then I got up earlier to have more time to practice. So it really, you have to kind of start somewhere and then just say, okay, that's another thing. So give yourself like 21 days and just say, okay, these 21 days, every morning, I'm going to take 10 minutes to do something. And then repeat. And after 21 days, you can choose, do I want to continue or am I not going to continue? But probably you will have some result from doing these practices for 21 days. So you want to continue. So maybe it's more a practical.
It's like
approach.
If you have too much time, it can even be a bit daunting. It's like, so I should be doing everything in this time and have all this luxury of time, and maybe you mean you bring it back to a little amount of time. It's like, that's where am I going to do it? Yeah, I like that.
Make it practical and give yourself a routine.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say, like, if you're looking for, like, there's going to be an aspect of you that's going to fight the desire to do these practices. You can't help that. Bardon talks about this in the book. You've basically got internal resources that aren't part of the team yet, and you're trying to get them on board, right? And so one of the ways that I've found, after teaching kids who wanted to play like Hendrix or whatever, but they didn't practice, and it's like they would see me play and they'd be like, man, I want to do that. And I was like, well, bro, you got to play and you got to learn to listen and da. But I'd say to them, look, you're going to get home, you're going to have your guitar sitting there, and you're going to be looking at it going, oh, yeah, there's going to be all these conflicting weird things going on. Okay, you just go, okay, you acknowledge that there's these weird things going on. I don't want to practice. Okay, that's cool. Talk to that part of yourself like it's a child and go, okay, that's fine. You can just keep saying that. I don't want to practice. And then what you do is that while you're saying to yourself, I don't want to practice, you just pick up the guitar or you pick up the book or you pick up the exercise and you do it anyway while this other thing's going on. You basically bypass this lesser aspect of yourself, and that will come into line. It wants to help you out, but it's got other things from other programs. The auto suggestion is great too. That's such a great tool. Like, you get your beads, you rock them out, 108 repetitions of I practice every day, or you frame it in the first person, in the positive, and in the present tense. Auto suggestion is one of the best tools, man. I can't speak highly enough of it. But thank you, Nostalgia, and thank you for all those wonderful responses. Now, we've got a few more questions, but from the chat, but I really, really want to get this one out there to the panel, and we're going to start with Mr. Philip Harris Smith on this one. Does music or sound play a role in your practice?
Yeah, especially at the moment, I'm working to integrate some of Bardon's universal keys with Enochian magic, and the main bridging is tonality. I think when we were talking before, I talked about how simply transliterating the attributions Bardon gives for each letter in his third book across to the equivalent Enochian letter. That's all fine, but it's actually the musical tone that seems to produce the genuine linkage out of all the attributions. It is that musical pitch for that particular letter that seems to be the key thing. So absolutely, I remember reading a very famous alchemist, Jean Debris, who started the Philosophers of Nature. I don't know if they're still around now, but his wonderful books on alchemy, lab alchemy, are still on the shelves. They're online, should I say. I don't know if they're on the shelves. But he said something about this, which is very germane and to the point. He was talking about if you had a piano keyboard that stretched to infinity, so you're at one end of the keyboard and you do the chord of, say, A. Okay, so that's the chord A. If you take it a few thousand miles that way, Debris said, and I think he's right, then you, at this incredibly high octave, millions of times higher than the human octave that we can hear, you push the same keys and sounded the same chord. That's oxygen. Or the chord G is nitrogen. So he's identifying the fundamental importance of tone with respect to manifestation. And therefore it is no surprise to me that in my work, the tone is the key point and the bridging point between Bardon's universal hermetic key and the more narrowly defined Enochian key. So yeah, very, very important at the moment. Just the whole. I mean, it's something you can talk about for hours, but that puts it perhaps in a nutshell. How the importance of tone and how it is universal and can act as a bridge. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
But I think I've got as best as I can there.
Great one. Thank you for that. Armand, have you got any comments on this?
Well, it got me into practice. So music got me into internal practice. And so I can explain that shortly, how that happened, because it's quite interesting, really. I was a drummer already for a long time. And then I had the opportunity to study in America for 3 months, private study with a very famous American jazz teacher. He also teaches in Berklee College of Music, and a famous jazz guy is a Canadian guy called Ian Froman. And when I had my first lesson with him, it was unbelievable. I was like, who is this guy? What kind of guy is this? The first thing he said, well, after the introduction, etc., he said we started talking about drums, and there was only concepts. It was only concepts. He wrote some little things down, some exercises. He was only talking in concepts. He was a student of Elvin Jones, famous jazz drummer, played in the John Coltrane Quartet, and he was a direct student of him. So he adopted that and that sort of playing, and he taught that sort of free playing. But I had problems playing freely. I had them. I came from a more pop rock thing where you play beats, and this stuff is constantly conversational, if you will. I mean, it's all over the place, right? So he said to me, I always sound good. That's what he said to me. I was like, what? He said, whenever I play, I always sound good. And I was like, well, I don't. I know I don't. I was going through good gig, bad gig, good gig, bad gig. And I was searching something. Music was my sort of bridge between me and reality. I understood my reality through music. It gave me a sort of a feeling of being protected in some way, because music I understood. And I also, as a kid, understood that that the musicians, the adults that make music made sense to me, and all the other adults didn't. I found them threatening. I found them confused and unpredictable. So I didn't feel really safe with people, but I did feel very safe with music and musicians. So Bruce Springsteen was my friend. He really talked to me. He was talking to me directly with his lyrics and everything. So I was in that sort of state. But when I started to become a musician and putting myself on stages with all sorts of people, and that was so exposed for me, I was like, I say that, very sensitive. That has advantages, and it also has disadvantages in some situations. So I was really searching for how can I build this bridge between myself and just play freely, and no matter where I am, and always sound good, And he was really the first guy that said to me, you have to take responsibility for every note that you play. He was talking in that sort of language to me. I was mind blown by this guy. I was just looking at him, talking. I was like 29 years old already. So I had lived a little, and I was like, this guy is unreal. But in the years after, I went back to America, had some private lessons with him at his home. This was at a school, but that later at his home. And I changed that around with help from him. But I very much noticed the first time I had lessons with him was like, I miss something in my life. I miss a certain focus. There's something that needs to change in me, and doesn't really have to do with music because I breathe music, but something is in between me expressing music. And that's maybe something I'm fearful about, or it's my concentration, it's probably both. But I have to really dive deep into myself to change something deep in myself, because my heart is closed off. I need to really learn how to play, need to just get it out there. And that got me not only in getting better in drumming, but actually it was not long after that I started Tai Chi practice. So it really got me into it. So music is everything for me, and it's vibration, as you just said, right? It's energy. It's pure energy, and I don't know of another art form really that can change your state instantly as music can. I know of some paintings that can really boom, blow you away, but music can change your state immediately because it's a frequency. It's just a frequency, and how you astrally respond to it, and then even physically, mentally respond to it. For me, it's everything. So I have a hi-fi system upstairs. There's records there. I sit there. I cannot really listen to music anymore while doing something else. I'm in that phase of my life. I'd rather have silence than around me, But when I listen to music, I put a record on. I don't have any digital there. There's no Wi-Fi. There's just speakers, a couple of amps, and a record player. And I put on some whatever, Shostakovich or Zappa. I don't mind. And I just zone in. So music, it brought me here, and it's still there, and it's such an important part of my whole life and being, and so grateful for it. Yeah.
Great, yeah, and I just want to say quickly too that there was a big conversation about when music started getting compressed into digital formats, and then there was this sort of loss of dimensionality to music. Going from an 80 meg WAV file down to a 3 meg sort of MP3, and not everyone could really notice it, although kind of could. But if you start down this track of hermetics, you start picking up on subtlety, and I tell you what, you might end up going down and looking for vinyl and getting yourself a turntable and an actual tube power amp, because because nothing else is going to cut it, man. And so when you want to fill up that room, or even get yourself, I've got a nice pair of AKG headphones there, that just beautiful. And you just go, oh yeah, I totally hear you. But there's something very full about sound. It's an experiential thing. And, also obviously with, I haven't got an image here, but essentially sound can reorganize physical matter as well there's a process called cymatics. And, it's an organizing principle. And you can see how two-dimensional, you sprinkle sand on a metal plate, run a single tone through it, and raise that frequency, and you'll watch the two-dimensional geometry change. Well, that's a two-dimensional slice of a three-dimensional image, basically, and that affects you. And so another conversation for another time. But I'll keep this moving around because it's such a great topic. But Didi, now obviously Armand, he's got his setup. What about yourself? What's your relation? Do you have a relationship with music and sound in your practice?
Absolutely. Well, I think I have a relationship with music and sound in my life. So yes. In my practice as well, I'm being married to a musician. There was music in the house always, and still is. So but I think just sound sound around you, it does something to you respond to it, and you can filter it, but it's also where you live, the sounds around your house, the sounds when you go outside, the birds singing in the morning, it just gives you a certain feeling. And with music, I love to listen to certain music too, because it does give me a certain feeling, or going to a concert. And nowadays we especially go to like classical concerts, and it just, you have this experience with each other.
No smartphones.
No smartphone. Most of the times in these concerts, there are no smartphones. So there's a lot of concentration, focus, and then you just go through a piece of music, and it just, you open up completely, and you open up as an entity, almost like a whole, being in that experience, and it just does something to your being. Experience music that way. So yeah, it's there always. Music, sound,
Well, wonderful, yeah. And I mean, going to a crafted musical experience. I'm not knocking the pop and rock concerts, because that was a big part of my life too. But but when you go, when you go and listen to sort of like an instrumental of, classical music with an arrangement, and there's a lot of thought and composition or arrangement that goes on in that process. And like you said, I think a lot of people underestimate the effect of having your smartphone in physical proximity, or if it's a social taboo at a particular event, and you just have an unconscious thing of like, you're just going to leave it there and forget about it. Maybe the actual experience of the event is actually like holding your focus. I think you can actually tap into that, just like going to a Buddhist temple. There's going to be all these people focusing. There's an energetic sort of ambiance going on there that you can harvest in a sense too. And you can capitalize on that experience more so than if you go to I won't say any particular muso, if you go to a pop rock concert, everyone's just got their phones out all the time. And it's like their attention's going from there to that, from there to that, from there to that. And it's just this degeneration of focus. And so you get a lesser experience, I guess.
Can I say something about that? Just short, can I say something about that? Because we were at a Keith Jarrett concert. Yeah, I don't know if you heard about Keith Jarrett, the famous jazz pianist. Well, he doesn't play anymore, but he had one of the most famous jazz trios of the last 30, 40 years, something like that. So when the North Sea Jazz Festival in Holland had its like anniversary, something like that, they invited this trio over, the Keith Jarrett trio, to do a performance. This is how famous they are, right? So they come in, and it's well known that this guy has something in his contract that says, if there's too much noise in this audience, I can stop and walk away and still be paid.
Wow.
So when we came to that concert, and this is why I'm just saying this, right? We came to this concert. It's like a 4,000 seats classical hall in Rotterdam. We come there, and there's everywhere. There's these leaflets all over the place, like no smartphones. Turn it off. You don't want to be responsible for this, because, there were no jazz gigs in Holland that night, because every jazz musician was there. This is how famous this guy is. Okay, so we come to this concert, we sit there, and everything starts quieting down. The promoter comes up and he says, I repeat it one more time, you don't want to have this on your conscience, because this guy can stop one peep of one smartphone and he's out of here, right? So this is what you were just saying, Phil. What happens then is that you get this laser focus of 4,000 people, roughly, focused on this stage, where it's totally acoustic music, right? There's a grand piano, a set of drums, and a bass, double bass. And the focus on this is just incredible. And this takes 2 hours, 2.5 hours. There's like 4, I would say that, when they come back every time, encores. It was a mind-blowing concert because of this focus. You can see what a group of people can do if they really focus on one thing. Still gives me the chills. And this guy knows that. He just knows that. We're in it together. That's his statement, right? We create this thing together. It's the combined focus of everything. This is jazz, right? It's in the moment. So, and also the audience was so respectful that, like, at the last of a ballad, there was like these 3 seconds of silence, and then an explosion of applause, right? An explosion. This guy would just be like this, and then he would lift his hands up to start again. It's like 4,000 people are completely dead silent. I mean, it was most incredible concert. When you talk about concentration, no smartphones. Oh man, I was so happy that I've had that experience, you know?
Yeah, that's probably a reasonably rare thing now, the state of the social landscape and that. So yeah, brother, wonderful thing to share. Mr. Clint Sabom, now I'm sure you have something to share on this topic of music and sound, whether it's lifestyle or practice. You know, you've had a variety of experiences that you've shared, and I'd love to hear what you have to share on this.
Yeah, I've got a lot to share. I want to say too that there's really good energy coming through in this group session. So y'all are all doing great work, you know, because I can kind of feel it. Real quick, did you mention Bruce Springsteen was your friend?
Yeah. When I was growing up, my mom was a complete fan. So it was like the first bigger concert I ever saw. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I want to say something, and then I'll get on to different, more sane things. But I'm going to say something. I'm going to say something completely absurd. But if you have astral larvae or bad energy in your practice room, go on YouTube, look up Bruce Springsteen, Land of Hope and Dreams, and play that song. You can exercise the bad energy out of your room with that song. It will come through as the powerful golden light of the divine. He has other songs that are sacred too, but that would be the one I would go to. So I know that sounds a little weird, but it will get rid of anything. So anyways, that said, I went to a monastery. I did Gregorian chant there, so I had a little bit of background. For a while, I was reading the daily liturgy and doing the Gregorian chant out of the liturgy from the monastery. After I got out of the monastery, I was still doing that some. And then I kind of came to a phase where I would basically listen to Gregorian chant in the background with like candles lit, the altar lit up, the altar opened and lights off, and Gregorian chant in the background while I was doing my practice. And you know, I know I agree with everything that's been said about getting rid of smartphones, but I did use a smartphone and just went into YouTube looking up long Gregorian chants. But music and different kinds of good music will flood your practice room with akasha. It will energize the space you were there. For instance, the monastery I went to was so charged. I mean, they weren't into hermetics, but it was pretty much Christian mysticism, which is kind of similar in a lot of ways. But basically, you know, that whole monastery was charged with an energy. And you can do it to your room and your space and especially obviously your practice room where you do your practices, and you can really charge up the room, not to mention charging up yourself, charge up the room. And, you know, sure, there are certain pop and rock singers that have really good vibes, but I think classical is very good. I think jazz is very good. You know, for a while I was listening to different jazz musicians while I did my practices, but music really fills the energy of a room and it leaves a charge to it, you know. And I get a lot of people writing me, honestly, that say they're struggling with having astral larvae or schemata or bad energy in their room, and playing music can be a great way to kind of just clear out the junk. Playing music in the room, it's fantastic. Obviously when I would do the Gregorian chant, that helped a lot because it was coming from me. But even if it's coming from an outside source, I think that's really good. I mean, this is a good topic because music can really charge you up. It can charge the space up. It can really bring life into you and into a space. So yeah. And again, I'm not saying this about all music, but I do think jazz is good, classical is good, any kind of Gregorian chant is also very good. There's obviously other religious traditions that have chants. There's Buddhist plays on YouTube that have mantras. There's Hindus that have long pieces too. I mean, select what feels right to you. But yeah, I think it's fantastic to bring into your life. And as I've gotten older, that's changed. I'm not obsessed about the latest pop singers. I don't even know who most of them are. Like I'm not necessarily into most singer songwriters anymore. I basically just like to go to jazz and classical and Gregorian chant, and and then the absence of music too is okay. Silence is okay. When I drive in my car, I drive in silence. I'd rather silence than sound. I've just kind of came to a point where I prefer the silence in my car than sound. And so that's what I do. So, yeah, those are my thoughts.
Oh, you're muted, Phil.
Thank you for that. Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Clint. Yeah, I just want to say to the audience too that, there's ways of exploring the effects of sound and music with your step one mental training. So if you're just sitting there watching your thoughts, for example, and you try playing a range of things, this is a suggestion I would offer, a warm invite for your consideration, is that to try it with instrumental music versus music with vocal, with spoken words, because there's functions in your brain, in your mind, which will activate trying to decode and translate words, which actively, like, it's turning another function on. So if you remove that and you're just listening to the music, something repetitive and repeating on a loop, like just a nice soft ambient sound, or even some like Hildegard von Bingen, for example. It's a very sacred music to infuse into the space, and it sets the scene for the operation. And but moving from sort of sung music, and like Clint says, you can put on some music that's very uplifting. Maybe it reminds you of a childhood memory, and it's going to raise your vibe to go there. And that's these things that are looking for a food source, these larvae and that, they're not going to get that because your vibe's rising too high, and you're not putting off the food that these things want to an extent too. Now, there's obviously a bit more context probably needed for that. But just for myself, I'm a musician from way back, but I don't really play and listen nowadays. I'm very particular about it. But I must say I enjoy single instruments, woodwind instruments, harps, very soft things that are not too busy, and I used to use a lot of binaural beats as well. And that would, help to basically drive and train the brain down to operate at a certain frequency. It creates a set of metrics, alpha, delta, beta, gamma, and these types of things, theta. And you can explore consciousness at those levels too. Unfortunately, those things can become a crutch as well, and you've got to wean yourself off that stuff because they can't. But once you learn how to capture what happens at that level, then you can recreate that for yourself. So these things are aids, but music, and just in the vein of Kabbalah as well, in Bardon's Kabbalah, where we start with a mentally produced sound, and then we bring it to a very softly spoken sound, and then a highly vocalized sound. we can see how sound is used essentially to latch onto and guide the energy through the various poles and bodies. So Phil knows what I'm talking about here. So basically, this is the spoken word. The world was spoken into existence. These types of things. But there's a process, and we have a color and a sensation. But essentially, the thread that binds them all together is this process of moving sound from a mental state through a very soft state to a very physical state, where when you're chanting and you're able to fill your body up with the sound, like all of your, if you want to call it your fascia, or there's a part of you that's just vibrating in that, and you're able to move that because you can sing a scale, da 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 da, and you can feel these resonating chambers rising through your body as you go through a scale. You can take that and spread that. You can run that through your whole body. And I'm going to have to set up a talk on Bardon's Kabbalah, like with a bunch of people at some point, because there's so much fascinating stuff to talk about. How, you can do so much with sound and with an intention. My gosh, very interesting. Okay, thank you so much. What a wonderful topic. Now, we are reaching, we're about 15:15. We're about 15 away from the 90-minute mark. If anyone wants to or needs to disappear, that's all good. I'm good to go for about another 45 if anyone wants to stick around for a bit. So I'll just put that out. Yep, feels good. Clint, how are you like for time, sir?
Oh, I kind of need to go a little soon.
Okay.
You've reached it.
Yep. Okay. No, that's cool. Thank you. Well, what we can do is that would you like to do another question, or would you like me to give you the exit strategy now?
The exit strategy. I don't know what other question is it.
Well, we can keep it. Here we go. Should we do just a quick round here? I've got a quick fire set of questions here on insights and tips, and we can start with Clint. And that is basically, I've got 3 items here, and if I could get the guests just to pick one of these each, and just to give us a quick rundown on tips for these things. Lucid dreaming isn't really talked about in initiation into Hermetics at all, but as we know, it's a very useful tool for lots of things. So lucid dreaming, mental transference, or pore breathing the elements. Would you like to pick one of those, Clint, or and just share any insights or tips that you think might be of use for people?
Sure. I can share one of those and do the exit strategy. How does that sound?
We're Oscar Mike, brother. Go for it.
We're what?
Don't worry, I'm just being silly. Go for it, my man.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I missed a joke, I guess. Yeah. Well, let's just start with pore breathing the elements, because I think that is central to Bardon's work. And a lot of people come into the work and they're strong in water and they are weak in fire. Mm-hmm. And so, pore breathing fire, it starts off, in my experience with clients too, is you imagine fire all around you. You imagine fire in the house. You imagine your whole house burning down. And no, it's not going to actually make your house burn down. Don't get too superstitious. But imagine fire all around you, and you're sitting in the big bonfire of a burning house, and that bonfire is in you, and the fire is in you, and start breathing that fire in. So it starts off with imagination, becomes manifestation, and then with all the imagining of all the fire everywhere, you're breathing in the fire. And you can, and if for some reason that works with most people I work with, but if for some reason that doesn't key you in, you can use physical cues in your life to key you in. Like you could take a hot bath, and then when you're trying to breathe in fire, imagine you're in that hot bath breathing in the fire. You can go to the sauna and get all the heat in the sauna, and then when you're doing the fire exercise, imagine yourself in the sauna when you're just in your room. And so you can use those physical cues to kind of lock into. So you're imagining it all around you. And so I would say it's just imagining and then, manifesting. And when you imagine, it's not just like imagination, like it may or may not be true. You're creating that vibe, and it happens in the soul body that a lot of people call the astral body. But it's just to get to a point where you have it started. Air can be floating up in the clouds on a landscape where you can see the sky, or it could even imagine a helium balloon that you're breathing in. Water could be imagining you're submerged into a lake, into an ocean, and you're just breathing in that water. And one of the things Bardon says about water is it's cold. And I don't necessarily think that it does have to be cold, actually. I think it could be warmer water too, and that would work as well. Whatever the water is, just make sure you're imagining that water and breathing in the water. And the earth is just the kind of rocky earth, as if you're maybe under the ground a little bit, and it's all earth around you. And that can sometimes kind of stuff you with solidness. And before this session today, I basically had a client who just did all that for a week and noticed tremendous changes from the time I saw him last week until today. There were tremendous changes in him with the pour breathing with the elements. So I would say that comes early. I believe it starts at the end of in step 3. And I would say that's one of the pivotal things in initiation into hermetics. And the more you can do that, the more you're going to contact the Akasha, the more you're going to be able to do the higher abilities. You start talking about mental transference, you're looking at real high abilities that a lot of people struggle to even get that high up that quickly, which is completely understandable. But the pour breathing, the elements is so vital. So I hope what I've said is somewhat helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you. That was very, very enlightening, actually. And I think, by immersing yourself in a very sort of like visually sort of engaging experience, what you just wonderfully said there is, I think it adds like an element of, fun, but also, like I said, engagement. Like you're not just trying to put this thing out and bring it in. You're actually putting yourself in a situation where you're making use of your various faculties to basically, help to build this experience. So thank you. That was a wonderful thing. And so I tell you what, brother, I'll execute exit strategy protocol Alpha Delta 3, and we'll give you a wonderful sign off here. You've been very generous. Thank you so much for your time, Clint. And please give us a little bit of a dig for what you're up to and what you're about here.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you, everyone. Thanks for hosting this. Thank you, the guest. It's been a joy to be here today. You can contact me at clintsabom.com if you're interested in individual coaching, where I will answer all your questions. It's usually people have a lot of questions because Bardon's language, in my opinion, is very minimalistic. So people can run into tons of questions. So I can just answer questions for an hour when they first see me. I can coach you through the steps and just provide a safe space to process everything. And, there's also a mental health component to all of this. And I'm trained in counseling. So if there's some mental health going on, I can kind of combine Bardon work with a little bit of mental health coaching as well. That's completely fine, and is more common than maybe some think. I don't know. But, so I offer that. You can contact me through clintsabom.com. That's my main thing. I have a few courses on Perseus Arcane Academy, and one of them's on emotional release, which I really think helps with getting into the elements and, Bardon work in general. It will really open you up, and it's based on the Sedona method. And I should have put a link up there to it, but that's only $19, and it's on emotional release. And they're audio recordings that are kind of meditation guides to be listened to again and again. And then I have a class on steps 4, 5, and 6 that's also on Perseus Arcane Academy. And then I do group transmissions, which are only $25 per person, and I do them about every 2 to 3 weeks. And it's 30 minutes of a transmission, then 30 minutes of discussion. And again, you can just contact me through my website at clintsabom.com, or you can email me at thegraveyardcowboy@gmail.com. I mean, that works too. Either way works. And, I'm really glad that the Bardon community is growing. I'm really glad that we're doing things. It seems like we're getting the word out there about Bardon more, which is good. I think people fall in love with this work once they read it and become hooked and want to do it. And it's getting more popular almost by the day, I kind of feel. So this is really good. But my main content is on the YouTube page. And, that's my YouTube videos that I put out every Friday. And it's just Clint Sabom. Type in Clint Sabom on YouTube. My channel will come up. Or it's YouTube, / The Graveyard Cowboy. But it's probably easier just to type in Clint Sabom in the search bar in YouTube, and the channel will come up. And so I have videos on everything too, like all the steps, all the theory, all the different aspects, all the different issues people have. And sometimes clients give me ideas for videos. And so that's kind of the way to kind of get in touch with my free content. So I think I've said enough at that point, but thank you everyone so much. It's been such an honor being here.
Thank you so much, Clint. And yeah, always a pleasure to have you here. And please, everyone, you can find all of Clint's other details that he hasn't mentioned or has mentioned in the description below. I've put it all on there, including his YouTube channel. So please go and check out Brother Clint's very generous body of offerings on YouTube and thereabouts. Have a beautiful day, Clint. You stay well, and thank you for joining us.
Blessings to everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to pass this question that we brought up about where are we here? I'm going to pass that to Mr. Philip Harris Smith. Is there something you would like to share on a particular topic on this range of delectable opportunities here?
Well, which one do you guys want to do? Lucid dreaming or mental transference?
I would be on the pore breathing the elements as well. The other two, I have some experience with it, but I would love to do some more of the pore breathing if that's possible.
So is it okay if I do the lucid dreaming?
Yeah, sure.
You go for your life, brother.
The reason I'm interested to talk about it is because, as you point out, Phil, it's not in Bardon's work. He lucid dreaming is where you are conscious during your dream, and there are a number of good and bad outlines and methods that can be found, for example, on YouTube. And as a practice, it has a good and bad side to it, which is perhaps why Bardon doesn't touch on the technique. There are, for example, physiological side effects from developing lucid dreaming. Your dopamine levels drop, which is why it's a bad idea to do in the winter. It can disrupt your circadian rhythms for sleep. And of course, this would all impact negatively on any other spiritual practice you're doing. So lucid dreaming tends to be sidestepped by a lot of people for these very good reasons. I particularly remember one chap about 5 or 6 years ago. I was just looking at him on YouTube, and he'd gone especially to Vietnam, because there was a tower block there that had been built in the 1960s during the conflict between Vietnam and the USA. And you had these small, very basic flats with no windows, none. So he was utilizing the lack of daylight to facilitate the lucid dreaming. And I would say that psychologically, the guy must have been absolutely solid, because that kind of dopamine crash could cause some depression in some people, but he seemed quite mellow. And the guy has made a sterner stuff than me. So this illustrates the value and drawbacks that lucid dreaming has. Speaking for myself, the techniques are fairly basic. You do a dream diary before you go to sleep and when you wake up. As an aside, if you're a beginner to magic, you need to be able to ritually purify yourself if you do that, because you can be taken advantage of by low-level astral entities. Because you're, as the Muslims rightly point out, you have guards, you have angelic guards, and at the changing of the guard, you are vulnerable, and that is this hypnagogic or this hypnopompic state, just as you wake up or go to sleep. So a psalm or a ritual purification, if you're interested in this kind of work. And for myself, I took it so far and then left it, because it was disrupting much more daytime hermetic work because of these disruptions to the circadian rhythm. And I did it in the summer as well, because dopamine levels tend to be higher than naturally. So what I do with it is, it's kind of something that isn't really used, and I will have a lucid dream because something wants to tell me something really important. And then I don't do it every night, and it's once or twice a year sometimes I get a lucid dream, but because I sort of open the door a crack, as it were, for this functionality, what happens is it becomes a useful manner for spiritual entities to interface with me if it is important. So something important's happening, I suddenly have a lucid dream. And I realize I'm in the lucid dream, and I don't suddenly wake up, because I've done enough practice so that doesn't occur. One of the problems with lucid dreaming is, initially you have your dream, you awake in your dream, and you wake up from the shock of it. So because I've got past that stage, even though I haven't mastered the method, I haven't done it enough for that, I can wake up in my dream and realize I'm lucid without waking up. And then I can interact with whatever it is that wishes to communicate with me in that place. Because I'm a magician, I have no concerns about negative entities being troublesome. My link with divine providence and with angels is more than sufficient, that I barely ever even see anything like that in my dreams, unless I've been eating too much cheese before I went to bed. There are cheese dreams. If you have too much cheese, you will have bad dreams. There's no doubt about it, lucid or not. But so that would be, there are lots of techniques online. Bear in mind that doing this work will disrupt your natural circadian rhythms and depressed dopamine. You will also experience REM rebound. In other words, you haven't been sleeping enough, you haven't had enough REM sleep, so you will naturally start REMing, and you will have micro sleeps in the daytime. So obviously, if you've got an important schedule of work, be it mundane or hermetic, this will have to be shelved. So that's the practicalities of the matter. That being said, you can, as I have, develop the facility and then just use it from time to time as an alternative channel. And that would be my recommendation with it. But there are some people that do immense amounts of work with lucid dreaming. They must know more about it than me, because they don't seem to have suffered any of the rigors that I have mentioned. So as a semi-expert in the matter, I'm afraid I can offer no more than that.
Oh, it was wonderfully articulated. Thank you. And yes, there's a lot of purchase to be found within the dream opportunity, but there is also this thing where you wake up in the morning and you're bouncing out of bed because you've had a lucid dream or a really vivid dream that's been very beneficial, just really curious, and it sparked an inspiration within you, and that's great. And then there's the one where you wake up and you feel like you've just run a marathon and you've got nothing left and you fail to function throughout the day. And then there's the one where you get a visit from a challenging situation. And
Phil, do you mind if I take this doggy out for a wee? She's begging.
Absolutely.
I'll be
absolutely.
right back.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go on, you brother. Yeah, no, all good. Love it. I love it.
Yeah, love dogs.
Oh, dogs are the best. And and I just want to say that it's like any of the practices. There's things can be taken to an extreme and become unhelpful or unhealthy and have an impact. And if the core is, and for me, I have to say, I'm a Reiki practicer. I practice Qigong, and I'm slowly working my way into Tai Chi. I also I like lots of things, but the core practice always comes back to the Hermetic stuff. Like that there helps to keep everything moving along, essentially. It's like a core practice. And with dreaming, what Philip said is very true. You really want to get an understanding of how sleep cycles and sleep patterns work. You need to have at least 3 to 4 90-minute cycles down of rejuvenating delta dreamless sleep. So what you can do is you can go to bed at, say, 9 o'clock and just don't put the intention that you're going to have a dream, like you're going to be dreaming. You just want to sleep. And then you might get up at 3 or 4. You can set your alarm. I don't. I can just tell myself to wake up. And then I wake up and I'm like, oh, okay, I've had that important deep sleep. And now I'm going to stay up for a bit, do a bit of focused meditation, set an intention. And now what I can do is I can, because the REM sleep patterns start to elevate, I can now take advantage of that. And I'll generally just do another 90-minute sleep cycle. I can go lucid and I won't wake up feeling drained, because there's an intelligent way of doing this. And, but like Philip says, when some dream, there's so many different types of dreams, but when something is trying to get something through to you, I find that, once or twice a year, I will have an extremely hyper-lucid dream and I'm fully present. I don't get knocked out of it. It's like this thing has been apportioned to me. We want to tell you something and we're going to make it very like, wow, okay, I'm fully I'm not always completely lucid, but when I have the faculty of dream recall, which is an excellent activity in itself, because it helps you with visualization and just memory development and that too. Because as you sit with that little fragment of a dream recollection each morning, it starts to expand out and you're able to reach deeper into the depths of your mind. And so that can be highly beneficial too. But yeah, I mean, it's worth doing the research, because you don't, if you've got a core practice that's critical, you don't want to impede that. Essentially, you want to make sure that thing can happen. And but there's one guy who's written a great book. Robert Wagner wrote a book, The Gateway to Lucid Dreaming. It's a very Jungian approach to dreaming, and it's great because he talks about why try and have a wicked lucid dream every night. It's like you've got a dream tank. You've only got so much juice in that tank, and if you use it, you're always running on empty, and you're basically starving the tank and damaging the vehicle. And so you're better off aiming for, if you want it regularly, go for one a month or something like that. Don't try, even every week can be quite challenging, but it depends on the practicer. But dreaming can be a full-time thing. I did a big period of it and went, okay, I went right into it. I leaned into it. And then, like most things, I go, okay, I've explored that. About here's good. Yep, that's cool. Okay, tick, sorted, and moving forward. So thank you for that, Philip. Now, Didi, have you got something on any one of these topics you'd like to share or comment on?
I'm still thinking about all the dreaming, because it's like, wow, that's a whole new area that I've never been practicing it. But from when I was young, I would have these vivid dreams and also get messages through these dreams. So it's interesting to get some more knowledge about it. So thank you for sharing that. And learning here. So, and some insight. Another thing, I'm not the one who's gonna teach you something about one of these things, but the thing that Clint was saying also kind of struck me when he said, "Oh, most people, they have this. They're all right with water element, and then the fire element is quite hard for them to go to." And that was exactly the same for me. I mean, I'm very comfortable in the water element. I was like, "Oh, this is like coming home. I'm here. This is my thing. I'm a water element person. I love it." And then to the fire element, I was like, "Man, I don't even want to go there." That was such a. I felt. Yeah.
I felt like that, right? Like
I didn't want to. I didn't want to. I would just stop, just not having the. I just couldn't go there. And then just through practice, and I started to become friends with fire element. But I also saw what Clint was saying, that things started to change in my life because I did this training. So I felt like, oh, also be careful with this training, because in my job, I just felt like, oh, I'm not taking it anymore. Like this manager saying stuff, and I was like, wow, I'm not sure if I can just back off, but I need to stand up for myself more. So I felt that I was that these changes came into my life, getting more in touch with my fire element. So, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, and it's still a practice. It's still something that I need to work on, but it's getting better and better and better. And and I love the sauna idea. I didn't know that one yet. So that's something that I'm gonna try. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got to say personally, like, even just talking about the wondrous sorts of like experiences you can have from pore breathing elements makes me feel a bit watery, to be honest. Because I'm just like, yeah, this is such a beautiful thing. But I've got to say, because I did years of mindfulness practice and I became quite passive after being a very ambitious musician and corporate guy, and then going, working in schools in a very feminine environment and primary schools and that, and then coming into meditation and Reiki. It's very watery and feminine type practices. And now I'm hanging out with a fire guy. Like, this guy's just pure fire. And so I hang out with him, and then I'm all jacked. And I feel that belligerence within me and that rebel start to rise again. And I'm like going, well, you've got to explore it and then tame it. You've got to build it and then tame it, right? And find the utility in it. But you've got to express it. It's one thing to breathe it in to familiarize, but when you start packing it, it needs to be used, or it's going to find a way out. And so, you that expression pathway, it's better that you have something handy that you can direct it through, rather than it finding a crack and then you having an unfortunate interaction with someone that you care about as a direct sort of, result of the practice. And so, So now, Armand, have you got something you would like to share on either of these?
Well, we're on the topic of elements, and I think, I want to continue what you are saying here, right? So you start building energy, because this is where it starts. I mean, before I started building the elements, I started with pore breathing first. Like, you have that skill coming from building the ball exercise, so you learn how to tune into vital energy, feel that, and really go deep with that. Have your 100 times of building the ball, and then you move into this pore breathing thing, and you start building energy and building energy. Now you start building the elements, so you sort of split them up in these four divisions. Can we call them that? So you cannot do that without working on yourself, right? You cannot do that without the black and white mirror. That's why it's there, right? So because like you say, you start building energy, but if it finds a leakage or finds a weakness in like say the fire element, a lot of people have that, is that where you would normally throw one glass through the room because out of your frustration, the whole cupboard is going to fly, right? I mean, yeah. So this is what I also say to students is you have to take this black and white mirror thing very seriously, right? So you do that at the same time as you start building these elements and really start investigating these elements. What are they for? What are these patterns that you recognize in yourself, and how can you put them there and start understanding yourself? So yeah, I just wanted to continue on what you were saying. That's such an important thing that you understand the theory, but also understand your own personal. You have to understand your astral body, right? You have to understand your soul. You have to understand your past. You have to become your own psychologist here. At the same time, I mean, this goes much deeper than just introspection. You have to be really intelligent with yourself if you want to improve on yourself. So. Yeah, so that's a very important one. Another practical one is that I loved what Clint said about, it's like, so what you imagine with everything, like the fire element, there you can add colors, like the color red or yellow, orangey, fire colors, but you can also add sounds. And that's what I learned from Mark Rasmus, to add sound. And that really, really helps. I never do the sounds too loud. I want to have the sound just tweaked in because I want to really be on the feeling. So let's say fire, I concentrate on the fire region. So also going a little bit before that, as you teach someone pore breathing, I want them to learn whole body pore breathing. I also teach them to pore breathe with their pinky or their left eye, or, you want to be like this or really detailed. So when you start going into these elements, you really can go into an area and focus on this area. So there's an imagining stage of like the imagining fire, or the room is burning. That's more of a feeling thing. And then you start adding the S sound, very softly going. It's more like a burning stove. Some things like hissing. And if you combine that with everything and do that pretty softly, it's gonna boost it like crazy. For the air element, it will be an ah sound, like soft, like a whisper. And also get yourself on a chair or standing and bring the energy up in your joints, and get this floating sensation while you're doing it. So you bring your center of gravity up to the chest area, the air element area, and add this sound as well. But you can also picture a blue sky, big sky, country. It's like and this sound with this is gonna build that to a next level also. For the water element, that would be an M sound, the M from Mark, but then you breathe that out towards the water region, so the abdomen region, and you start vibrating from the inside out your belly. So it's more like a. So I keep it inside, and I make my belly vibrate a little bit, and of course imagining water. And for the earth element, there's sort of the silent scream sound. It's more like a. So focusing on the lower part from the hips down, legs, but you will find as you make that sound, you just gently start squeezing your whole skeleton, so the bones will feel a little bit compressed. So these sounds have really helped me a lot. So there's the S sound for fire, there's the sound for the air element, there's the M sound, vibrating sound, keeping it inside, so breathing out inside. Does that make sense? Vibrating, and then there's the silent sound for the earth element, and that's just fantastic, but then I also teach people pretty quickly the first transformation, so that I do that. So I will do maybe 10 breaths or so for fire element, building the element, strengthening it. But then immediately afterwards, I go into the first transformation and start breathing stillness into that element, because this is how you balance the element inside itself, which is very important, right? So a lot of people think, so you balance fire and water, and then you get, there's truth in that, obviously, because if there's not enough fire in you and there's a lot of water, of course, but balancing the element inside the element itself do that in the first transformation. So go into astral breathing this element. So no sound anymore, pure stillness. It's just focusing on this area that you've just built. It will linger there for sure. It's there, and just breathe stillness into it. And then you end. That's what I do, and this is how I learned it. Afterwards, you have done all the 4 elements. You tune into the solar plexus area and go to the still point of your being. So this is in between the yang elements and then the yin elements. So this is the sort of the S in the yin yang, you could say. You go in there, go into stillness, and just I do make myself small and contract in my own universe to the stillness point of my being, and I just sit there for a while, go into the place of equanimity, and this is how I finish my pore breathing elements. So I don't only pore breathe them, I also astral breathe them in the same session. So that's what I wanted to add also for people practicing this, and that's just a great way of doing this. Sessions would be maybe, this is pretty long. It could be a 30-minute session, something like this, but well worth it. And students love it because you take them on a trip doing this. They really have a chance to go deep with them.
Yeah.
It's a ride, you know. It's a ride. Yeah.
Yes. So you covered some great ground there, and like encountering the ability to, at a very, very physical layer, to be able to affect an internal state. And so you basically create this state, and you encounter this experience you can bring in, or you can change within yourself, and then you learn to adapt and acclimatize to this tension that you build, and you get good. It's like, you don't start off lifting 50 kilos, you're going to start off with these little things, right? And so, because even though some people like taking the hero dose and going, man, I'm going to do half an hour of just breathing fire element, and it's like, bro, that ain't going to work out well. You need to, so, and it's funny because people underestimate the potency of these practices, and if you've got one that's out of balance or something like that, it's going to make itself known. And Bardon gives a very good sort of like one size fits all of like taking a very careful segmented approach to this, because it's ultimately like, the worst thing you want is that you write a book and suddenly everyone's like crapping out. They're having experiences, but they're basically cooking themselves. And so, yeah, I think, and with the Qigong stuff that Mr. Rasmus brings along, where you actually like, you start filling yourself with this flavorable or programmable medium of vital energy, and being able to change it in states, and then mentally transferring into that encountered state that you've put in within yourself, and then learn to just relax into that state to bring the stillness. You tame the element, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I really am taking ownership of it, and I am able to basically say I have a level of mastery over it. Not externally, you start internally, don't you? And then you go from the in out. So wonderful, thank you. Now we are coming up towards the end of the wonderful connection that we've had here today, and my goodness, there's so many pearls here. We've done so well. I've got a couple of quick questions, so I'm wondering if we can give some nutshell answers, and not everyone has to get on this. I'll just like put it out to anyone who wants to answer, and these are from the audience. And so I don't know if anyone would like to jump in on, can anyone help explain the connection between elements and the electric and magnetic fluid? Philip, go for it.
The electric and magnetic fluids underlie the elements. If someone has a look at Agrippa's description of the elements, he gives a reasonable theoretical outline of the relationship between the elements and the fluids, even though he doesn't really talk about the fluids that much. So if the elements, shall we deal with the 4 elements mainly, if they are the tetrapolar nature, which all human beings have, the magnetic and electric fluids are the fundamental duality that precedes that. So that is why, for example, Bardon shows you how to load the elements, the fluids from the elements. So, for example, he talks about the first step is to surround yourself, having trained through many steps, with the fire element, and then you draw the electric fluid into yourself from that element. And then, having loaded it into yourself, that fire element is then dispersed, leaving you with its underlying basis,
Yes.
the electric fluid. Similarly, with the magnetic fluid, he gives a similar method with water. Again, you've trained yourself with the elements. You surround yourself with water. You feel its coldness, all the rest of it, and you draw into yourself from it the magnetic fluid. You do not bring the water in. You do not load the water. The water stays outside. You draw the magnetic fluid in, and then you disperse the water. So and this is why Bardon says, blessed is the magician who has his two hands, one with the magnetic and the other with the electric, because that can be used for many positive or healing things.
Yeah.
And you can feel them. You can feel the difference between the elements and the fluids. So when you work with, let's deal with the water one, for example, you load the water, you can feel the coldness around you, and then you dispel the water, and you can feel the energy of the magnetic fluid in you. It's different. It's not the same as the water element. It was part of the water element. You just kind of drew it out, and then you got rid of the water, and you had this other energy that's now in you. For example, that's inductively you drew it into yourself. It's the same with the fire. You feel the heat of the fire, and it is very electric. You get rid of the fire, you've loaded the electric fluid, and you can feel it all over your skin. You can feel it, and then you Bardon rightly directs you avoid the heart when you concentrate it into the arm and down to the hand, and you can feel it can almost become quite painful if you overdo it a bit. And then obviously that leads on to vaulting. I don't want to just repeat Bardon's training. People can enjoy that for themselves by reading that. But essentially, you draw it out of the elements. Eventually, you do it deductively. You don't need to rely on the initial Paul briefing methodology that you learned, but you can still use that. But you can also do it just by what could be termed force of will, and you load the fluid. You can and then you start to feel the fluid. The magnetic fluid isn't electric, but it is kind of, it's not an electric fluid, but it does feel it's the opposite of electric fluid, and yet it does have that if we talk about voltage in electronics and electrical stuff, voltage and tension, there is a tension, and it is strongly analogous. It's not so easy to describe, but you can feel it, and it does make your body tingle. So the interesting thing is, the first few times you do it, let's say you've got your electric on your right side, you've got your magnetic on the other side. You can feel them, and they're different to how the elements felt, the water and the fire respectively. They feel different, and you, by doing this, you develop an understanding of their relationship between the elements and the fluids. So the connection is perceived. So the question is, can anyone help explain the connection between the elements and the fluids? By loading the fluids from the elements, you see the connection, but it's not possible to actually explain it, but you see it. Maybe someone can. I don't know. Maybe someone can explain it in intellectual terms, but you draw it out of the element, you dispel the element, you feel it in you. It's not the element, it's the fluid. It's different, but it comes from and is connected to the element. So you can see how you've actually done it the other way around. You've inverted what actually happens. The fluid emerges, and then the element comes from the fluid. What you've done is you've got hold of the element and in reverse taken the fluid out of the element. So it's in kind of reverse to the way it naturally progresses in creation, but it's experiential. The connection is experiential, and well, you know, the connection in intellectual terms is the fluids underpin the elements. The elements wouldn't exist without the fluids. But the actual experience of the fluids and seeing how they are drawn from, or perceiving, should I say, how they are drawn from the element as you do it, and then the difference between the fluid with the element and the fluid without the element is a somewhat more than one can simply explain, which is why Bardon doesn't bother to explain it. It just shows you how to do it so that you can see for yourself.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah,
So
I've gone as far as I can. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. And you guys are doing so well, because I know it's really late where you guys are too. So now, Didi and Armand, would you like to comment on this? Or I have one that may be a little bit more up your alley in regards to Tai Chi, if you wanted to have a tackle of that one instead.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm not sure what the question actually relates to, but Will's asking about, what about dancing, Tai Chi dancing? And he's got Shaman style there. I'm not sure how to comment on that, but essentially like being able to fill the body up and then move it under load to help train the memory retention of the feeling of energy, perhaps, is what he's pointing at. Because obviously when you're moving in Tai Chi, you're also massaging internal parts and things like that. But then there's a friend of mine who I taught how to build the ball, and he goes to dance raves and he's like, hey man, that thing you showed me, I build the ball, I pour, breathe it, I'm full. And he says, it's changed my whole experience. Now that could be for someone even who's been doing just basically forms, and then all of a sudden they learn how to pour, breathe, and pack the body, and it takes their Tai Chi to the next dimension. So I don't know. Can you guys share anything on this that you like? Or
it's actually, I was thinking about practice that we did the other day. I've done a lot of ballet when I was young. So perfect. I from when I was 6 till my 30th, I did ballet every week. And we were doing partner training last week, and I had some trouble with the concept, like, well, when one part moves, every parts move, or how do you say it? Yeah,
one part moves, all part move.
Yeah, exactly. And then because am I doing my legs right? And then I started to concentrate on my legs, and then I forgot my arms. And then he was like, how do you do the ballet? And I was starting to do a routine of ballet. And then it's the same concept.
Same principles.
Same principles there. Because when you do one part moves, you say it again.
Yeah, I stumble over these things as well. But yeah, one part moves, all part moves. It brings it back to the concept of elastic body. It brings it back to the elastic the fascia. So how do you unify the body? And now this is an entry into energy work as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's how, and of course in dancing or martial arts, it's about structure, right? That's the foundation of it.
It starts.
It needs a structure to build on. So yeah.
And I think for dancing, for me, because I was like 3 years old. This is the story my mom always tells everybody about me. Like when I was 3 years old, I asked my parents, I want to go to ballet lessons. And I don't know where I picked it up, but there was something about it. I think same with the music and stuff we were talking about earlier. And my mom said, you can go to ballet class when you're 6 years old. And so she said, you didn't mention it at all in those 3 years, but you turned 6. On that day, you said, okay, now I want to go to ballet lesson. And it's ever since I danced. So for me, there was such a freedom in the movement and the music. In those moments of dancing, there was such an openness, such a connection. And I think later on, I had no other means to to go there than the dancing. And so doing the practice and going into Qigong and Hermetics later on, now I have another way of reaching the levels, going into this mental space that beforehand, that was dancing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think for everything that we do, there's a physical aspect, there's a vital aspect, there's an astral aspect where there's expression, there's a feeling to it, and of course there's the mental body always involved. So if you think about dancing or martial arts or playing the guitar, even for playing a guitar, there's an elastic thing going on. There's muscle memory, etc. But what we call muscle there is actually fascia. It's actually, you program your body and there's an elastic thing involved. I mean, it's not just gripping with muscle, there's a sensitivity there, but there's also a feeling of expression that wants to come out, right? So with all these things, talking about dancing, Tai Chi, everything we're doing, there's always these aspects. That's why this training is so fantastic, because we go through all these frequencies. We explore them and we understand them better. We understand ourselves better. We understand ourselves from what are we, and what is this reality? Because there's not only your physical body, there's a physical reality, and there's also a vital reality, and there's an astral reality. And once you become aware of an astral reality, you're gonna make changes. You're gonna say, oh, I'm not gonna be involved with that anymore. This is but I'm gonna really be involved with that, because this is where my spirit is guiding me towards, because this feels good. You start moving towards things that bring something out of your talent, your true talent, and the things that have a true meaning for you into the world. I mean, that you can only start doing those things, I guess, if you start hitting brick walls with yourself, etc., coming to thresholds and points of no return, where you finally realize, I need to start training. I need to start learning about myself. Who am I? What is this reality? I mean, for a lot of people who are really going into hermetics training are people who really hit their heads somewhere, and then they've probably been at it for their whole lives already. They've already been pretty critical and sensitive, and so, and how you express it eventually, dancing, Tai Chi, Shaman, being a teacher, whatever you do, play the guitar, how you express yourself, there's always all these plateaus working together. And it's an Akashic reality, there's a light. And I do hope that people, when they walk this path, that they get that, that they really get it, that they start getting it for themselves and understanding what it is they are doing, how they want to express it, and in your unique way. I think this training is really about, the training serves you. You're not training, you're not serving a process here. It's not like, oh, you do every 10 steps, you first have to do all that stuff, and now you know what to, no, it's really being like, oh, this, of course you build a foundation, for sure. And I would suggest start with Qigong practice first. Make sure that you have that foundation going into this training. But then it's like, what is the calling? What's happening while you're training? What draws your attention in this training? It's like, where's your spirit resonating to a certain specific exercise? And really start going deep with that, because it's unique for you. So I don't know where this came from, but it just came.
I love it. I think too that, and I've said this before, is as you go through the change, through the training, notice how existing activities that you enjoy doing start to change, and that will give you some kind of roundabout metric or progress, or sort of like something where you can notice that it is having some kind of significant effect. Because especially if it's in something you care about, you will tend to be more focused and also more engaged in what you're doing. And so nuance will present itself a little bit more apparently than, say, with less engaging activities. But you can't deny it, especially like, we've been talking about with the paw breathing. When you start activating and nourishing and building awareness of that body, it definitely changes the way you walk. I mean, well, it's all the same with all the training, to be fair. But this has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you, everyone. We'll call it here, because man, it must be like you guys must be in October by now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you to the wonderful guests. Thank you to the wonderful people in the chat. We've had a great time here. There's many gems here to share, and I'll chop this video up at some point into questions that can be in smaller snippets. But I'm going to give final words and a plug to Mr. Philip Harris Smith as soon as I find his screen here. Where are we? No, it's not that one. Maybe it's this one. Oh, I can't seem to find the screen. So what we'll do is, there it is there. There we go. Right, this wonderful article. Now, Philip, people can get in touch with you via via Perseus, I presume. There's this latest.
The Enochian Aethers course is up and running now, and for the I think the princely sum of $11 an Aether, seeing as 11 is the number of magic, obviously. So the whole idea of that is that, because I've done all the Aethers, I can provide someone with guidance for exploring them. And apart from the profound spiritual experiences that they contain, they also have a very positive knock-on effect into Bardon's work. As I mentioned in the article, I in the early 80s, I had a go with Bardon, and I just didn't progress. I lacked the constitution, perhaps. I did a lot of easier ritual magic stuff. I did the Aethers. They were tough. And when I had reached the final first Aether, sometime after that, when I was on a honeymoon with my wife in Egypt, it became clear that I should return to Bardon's work. And I suspect very strongly that my work with the Aethers held me in good stead and allowed me to progress well with Bardon's Hermetic training. And therefore, if someone is experiencing, although the reason for that, there's a specific reason. Bardon clearly points out, certainly in his third book and in the others, that your karma from previous lives can impact your progress. He certainly says that in the third book, and I think he says it more than once throughout the various volumes. I would agree. The other point is that the Aethers, providing they're done properly, allow you to process karma in the Aether, not in the physical. Therefore, if someone is working really hard, but is making minimal progress or not as much progress as they think they should with Bardon's training, this may provide a solution to some of the difficulties they are experiencing by visiting the Aethers, by addressing at least some of their deeds from this life and others. They may be able to resolve some of that, and this may have therefore a knock-on effect into their Hermetic training as a whole, and therefore Bardon's progress with Bardon's work. And that's the reason why I'm offering that. Aside from that, there is a free course, because it has to be free. Otherwise Divine Providence will get upset with me. And that's actually some alchemy rather than spagyrics. And the alchemy is to extract the sulfur from some metals, which is very good for evocation to visible appearance of certain genii, as shown in Bardon's second book. That's what's going on at the moment. There's a book at some point in the imminent future. Obviously, that is up to Falcon Press and how they choose to run what they do. And that is about, it's called Enochian Hermetics, and it's literally about how Bardon's training and Enochian magic may be dovetailed. And my argument for that, based on personal experience, is that because Enochian automatically functions, it is of benefit to the Bardon practitioner who has developed all these wonderful hermetic capabilities through doing Bardon's training. And I think that's there's probably loads of other things, but that's what it springs to mind, I'm afraid.
No, wonderful. Thank you. And yeah, I love it. You know, you're very excellent speaker, and I'm very grateful for, you know, you what you're doing, and essentially, you know, using the Bardon framework and putting it up alongside the Enochian thing, and seeing how there is basically a missed opportunity or a value that hasn't been discovered that you're highlighting and bringing into awareness of people, because there is.
Phil, absolutely. You see, the thing, and I said this before we started tonight, I sometimes slap my forehead myself about myself. The thing with Enochian is, like, unlike any other language, if you speak it and you've had no Hermetic training, if you do that enough, stuff will start to happen out there as well as inside. Yep. It's involuntary. So this I would think will be of value and interest to any genuine Hermeticist. And will undoubtedly provide them with benefit and utility. Just that, it's why what Bardon calls I know this is the outro, so I'll be brief about this. It's why what Bardon calls sorcerers, people who don't really understand Hermetics, and just think if you wear a lion skin belt and make your wand on a certain astrological day, and you know, you'll get things done. It's one of the reasons why they are, I'm afraid, sometimes right. It's because if they use Enochian, they don't do any theurgy, any methodology, any inner work, they can get an output from it. That's simply true. Whether we like it or not, it's true. So therefore, if the genuine Hermeticist addresses the language, and we're talking about angels, we're talking about God's angels here, and a magic system that they're part of. If the genuine Hermeticist addresses this work, which involves working with God's angels, it's, as long as they're careful and methodical, it can only be to their benefit, I would argue. And it's certainly it's certainly what I do. And I'm, you know, being as I do it myself, this is what I'm saying, I suppose. Anyway, I'm going on an awful lot about it, so I'll stop there. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for everyone. Phil, thanks for inviting me again. And it's a real pleasure to meet both of you today. It's good to chat with Clint, but this is the first time I've met you guys. I feel like I'm at home in your parlor there. There's something about the way you go about things that is, even on a little screen on my iPad, is very welcoming. It's like I'm sitting in your parlor with you, drinking a cup of tea, and it's greatly appreciated.
Oh, thank you. So nice to meet you, Philip, as well. It's been great. Where are you in the world? You're in the UK?
I'm in the Rhondda Valley in Wales, in the UK.
Oh, wow. You just came from Wales. Yeah. Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful.
I believe my family is from Wales, actually. Just saying.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's the kind of place everyone wishes they were still in when they leave, I find.
Oh man, it's beautiful. It's just
still homesick after the holidays.
Oh man, but we just discovered through DNA search that we are both have Celtic backgrounds. So
well, there you go.
Yeah.
You felt the welcome in the valleys.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's nice meeting you. It's really great.
Real pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, I really appreciate that too, guys. I mean, I like setting up a nice little hangout here, and, you know, hanging out with good people is hanging out with good people no matter where you are. And so I'm grateful, you know, connecting people is great too. So now, Didi and Armand, you have a wonderful website and you have courses coming up next month. Would you like to give us a quick recap on what's happening before we head off?
Yeah. So, maybe you do it.
Okay, yeah. So we're in the process of creating the G-Scale Self-Mastery program. So it's going to be a private mentoring program. It's going to be available from October onwards. People can join at any time from there. And if they're interested in that, they can sign up for our newsletter through our website, gscales.com. And on the first opening, you can immediately click and subscribe to our newsletter, get updates from that. And also, we're going to start our podcast again from September onwards. And we're going to change that a little bit into the Self-Mastery podcast. It's going to be, so it's going to be the G-Scale Self-Mastery podcast. And we also want to work with guests as well. So we might invite any of you for that as well. You know, we have talks, and because I feel there's a community for sure. And Phil, in between, I want to really thank you as well for what you're doing. And I just want to say that, I think a lot of people are so grateful. You create a hub. Is that a good word for that? You create like a hermetic hub where people can just hear people talking about this. And I do have a feeling that you have a very important role there by providing that. It's just,
Thank you, Brad.
And your knowledge, right? So I just want to squeeze that in between because I'm very grateful for what you're doing. And so, yeah, that's coming up.
And we have, because I'm looking at the website, we have an online course as well.
Yeah,
so
that's the Core Essentials Qigong course that takes you through the foundational exercises of Qigong that can really help you also to go through that before you start with the Hermetic practice maybe, or alongside. I wouldn't split it per se. There's overlap there for sure, but there's things like the building the ball, pore breathing, all sorts of exercises that we take you through just as a preparatory work, or it really helps having a Qigong foundation for the higher work. And so you can go there and join that course.
And we'll also in the coming up podcast, I'm starting to get tired, so sorry for that. But we want to do more with nutrition as well.
Yeah, so nutrition.
So that's been a bit on the sidetrack, but it is such an important part. So we'll do much more about that.
Oh, absolutely.
Lifestyle and how to implement all this in your daily life, which is what it's all about. So and also for me, thank you, Phil, for organizing this.
You rock, man. You do perfect.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I think too that bringing people together who all have this sort of like relationship with Bardon's material, but have we have Tai Chi, we have alchemy, we have Enochian, we have Qigong, we have myself with Reiki, we have all these different people who have this underlying thing. Essentially, we're bringing together an idea of how a hermetic lifestyle can be actualized in real time in somebody's life, and they can pull from these things and take benefit. Because I'd like to think that anyone who comes on this thing has a reasonably academic and erudite way of articulating the information and sharing it and making it relatable, because we're all actively teachers, and content creators and authors and things like that. And so I'm really excited about where this is going. And so I'm just glad to have found something that I can offer while I'm on the path myself and bringing people together. So thank you for joining us, guys, because it's very cool. And I just want to say thank you to the audience for joining in, because you guys obviously help a lot too. If you want to support the channel, please like, subscribe, and share to spread the love. There's a join button. You can join a membership, and there's some other things too. And that if you want to learn more about the guests, please check out the YouTube description below. There's lots of cool things to check out there. And I just want to say quickly, I can't pull up the graphic fast enough, but I want to say big thanks to violetflamestudios.co.nz for sponsoring the live stream software this month. They've got an awesome game in production. You guys want to go check this out. It will make you better in lots of different ways. And it's just going to be a really slick presentation. It's going to be worth your time checking out. And the price point will be very, very accessible. I will say that straight away. So thank you to the chat. Thank you to my wonderful guests. Thank you to the All That Is. Aren't we lucky? It can be a good time. We just got to make a few changes here and there. Little adjustments can go a long way. Thank you so much. Stay well, everyone. If I could get the guests to stick around for 1 minute after I press the end button, everyone have an absolute beautiful, beautiful day. And we'll see you guys again for the next episode of the Bardon. And I'm done.